What's up, YouTube? This is Steven with Financial Independence Retire Early channel on my way to FIRE. So today I want to talk about why I don't have savings. So this might sound like a strange topic, but I figured, you know what, I have a unique perspective on how I do things and like to share that. So I built a dividend portfolio in a taxable brokerage account. So between that and my company's employee sponsored, or actually should call it an employee stock savings plan, ESPP, between those two, I have access to those funds at any time. Now I'm subject to taxes on the gains and on the dividends, but for the most part, what I try to do is construct a portfolio that has mostly qualified dividends. And with qualified dividends, they get taxed one bracket below your income tax bracket. So in most cases, the taxes I pay are zero. So I have enough of these with different holdings that pay at different times that I can pretty much afford not to really keep much of a balance in my checking account. So of course I have monthly expenses related to my mortgage, insurance, credit cards for gas and groceries and that kind of thing. But for the most part, what I do is I have it set up so that as my paychecks come in, it pretty much covers my bills and any extra money goes into the brokerage. Every once in a while, I'll have a winner in the brokerage account and I can sell off either the entire stock in full and have all of that cash back, and I can decide what to do with it. So a lot of times what I do is I split part of it between investing in my Roth. So since I'm under 50, this year I can put into 7,500 as the limit. And, I don't like doing it all at once. I prefer to do it over the course of a year. You never know what's going to be down. I know some people like to do it that way and put all the money in at the beginning of the year. But as we've seen, sometimes stocks go down. And if you put all the money in early, you don't have an opportunity to buy. So that's just the way I do it. But getting back to my main topic here, I'll go back and look at my balance on my home equity line of credit. So my payment is based off how much I'm borrowing. So currently I had to move some debt over towards the end of the year. Had a little bit of a cash crunch in terms of, paying off bills and all that stuff. You got property tax, all kinds of things being due, Christmas presents. And so what I do is I lower my contribution rate to my 401k the first couple weeks, or actually I should say the first couple paychecks of the year going into February. Try to catch up on bills, get all that stuff paid off, and then pay down my home equity line of credit as time goes on. So this is probably like year 5 or 6 of me trying this. And the reason I do it is because by contributing to my 401k, I'm cutting down the amount of taxes that I owe every year. That's pre-tax income into the 401k, tax deferred. So I did a calculation today and I looked at my last year or two, and I'm saving about $4,000 a year in taxes by putting so much into my 401k. And if you also include my health savings account, that's federally tax exempt, but not state tax exempt. And then the other thing that I have is my standard deduction, and my health insurance premiums, I believe, come off my tax as well for taxable income. So by doing that, I'm saving over $4,000 a year. I'm letting those accounts grow, and it cuts down my tax obligation. So I cut it pretty close sometimes, month to month, but for the most part, I have it down. And let's say that I have a dividend coming in of a couple $100. If I know that I'm going to be short on cash coming up and I don't have another paycheck for another week, but I have a bill due, I'll transfer most of that to my checking account. And it'll sit there for, right around the time that the bill is due. So I'll set up the payments in advance for most things. Mainly the credit card is the one that can get me because of personal things that I need to buy, groceries, that kind of thing. And I have a couple different cards. So if I can, I try to schedule it on a card that just closed out, or charge what I need to on that card. And effectively, I have almost 2 full months to pay it off because that cycle just closed. And I'm at a point where the next statement won't even generate for a month. So then I'll have that grace period on top of that. So I'll get somewhere between 50 and 55 days to pay it off. So eventually you get to the point where you do have to pay the piper and you have to pay off these bills. But I plan it in advance, and I have enough monthly dividend payers and quarterly payers that I can account for this. Every couple months I'll have a sizable amount coming in, and I can transfer that to the checking account, and then that money is deposited within a day. And like I said, I do cut it close sometimes. So it's a bit of a game to get all this going. A lot of people would think I'm probably creating more work for myself and more stress, but it's really not that much trouble for me. I know when these payments are due on these credit cards, and I'll take advantage of the cash back. And so a case in point is today, I have an Amazon Chase card, and everything you buy through Amazon, you get a 5% cash back. So if you delay the delivery date for a day or two, they'll give you an extra percent back. And during the Amazon events for Prime Day, they'll give you even more. I think there's times where I've gotten between 8 and 10% cash back because I bought it during that period and agreed to a later shipping date. So it works out really well. I buy enough on Amazon, I have the Prime, that I get back probably $200 to $300 a year in credit card rewards. But that also means I'm spending. So that's where they get you. You know, they know you're going to spend the money, but you may as well take advantage of the cash back on the credit cards. So I see that as a bit of a rebate. And, you know, between that and a Chase double cash credit card, I try to charge as much as I can to those because it gives me the most cash back. And so over the course of the year, I'm probably getting back somewhere around $500 tax-free. Though I did hear that there's legislation coming, I don't know specifically for California or what, but they want to create the cash back as a taxable income, which would really suck because I take advantage of these programs. And I also pay off the bills in full every month, so I don't carry a balance. So those programs are paid for by the people paying the 20 and 30% interest on the credit card month to month by carrying a balance. So I'll just take advantage of it for what it is for me, which is I'll pay it off in full and I'll take the rebate cash back money. So I'll transfer that money back to my account whenever it gets to the required minimum. Most of them it's $25 or $50 and you can cash it out. So I'm kind of in a nice spot right here because I have most of my big bills paid off and I can afford to increase my 401k contribution a bit higher. So currently I'm at 35% of my paycheck pre-tax goes into the 401k. So essentially I'm front loading it as much as I can when I have periods where I have wiggle room in my monthly budget. So as we get into March though, the big one that's going to hit me is the property tax bill, which is due around tax day in April. I am expecting a refund this year on my taxes, so that'll be good. So I need to get that filed here pretty soon as well. Maybe part of that refund I can put it towards the property tax bill and figure out what I need to do. The other thing is I participate in an employee stock plan, and the benefit of it is I get a quarterly bonus based off what I bought the prior year. So for example, if I bought $2,000 worth of stock in a particular quarter last year, let's just call it quarter one. At the end of quarter one this year, it does a look back and says, how much did you buy? And I'm still at the company. So it'll give me a 50% match on what I bought. The problem is when I get that match, it's taxed as a bonus. So it's a really hard tax. And the stock is locked up in a different account. And generally, I don't sell it right away. I could. I say locked up because I'm not given the cash. It just buys the shares for me. And so my employee stock plan, I have tons of shares, but I don't really sell it that often. So what I do is I just wait for the quarterly dividend and I use that to pay down the bills. So it just sucks because they take an extra $200 out of my check for 2 checks in a row off the top because of the bonus. And so it's good and it's bad. So you got to budget for that. And by the end of the year, this stuff evens out, but it just sucks the way they do it. I wish, anytime you get a bonus or you have additional income, they tax it really hard. And, it's just the cost of doing business the way I see it. So the other thing is this year they're going to make a change. I think with last year's earnings, the overtime isn't taxed. So I'm curious to see how that's going to play out when I file my taxes. I do work some overtime occasionally, and hopefully that helps with getting my tax refund increased. So with that said, I'm comfortable doing it this way. I go through phases where I have to draw against the line of credit to pay the bills. Maybe the market's down at the same time. Well, I want to keep that 401k allocation somewhere around 20 to 25% on a minimum. And on the high end, I'll go as high as almost 40%. I'll go 38% sometimes on my 401k, especially towards the end of the year. And the reason I do that is because once you get out of the calendar year, you can't contribute again. So if I borrow the money, I'm paying interest at 5.5%. divided by 12 for that balance for that month. Well, if I pay 5.5%, that's cheaper than paying 12 to 20% federal income tax plus state income tax. So to me, it's worth it. To some people, they might think I'm crazy because I'm borrowing on it. But, my mortgage is only about $115,000 currently. And in Southern California, that's pretty darn low. It is a variable interest rate. And so I am taking advantage, though, because in this last year and a half, since September of 2024, they've been lowering the interest rates. So my payment's gone down quite a bit. I did get a little bit burned with this strategy when they were raising the interest rates, because every time they did it, especially in the beginning, they were doing it by 0.75. It was increasing my monthly payment higher and higher, even though I didn't increase the balance. So once I got that under control, I sold some stock and did what I could to get my balance down, but I was getting killed by that interest. And so probably for about a year and a half, it really sucked. And I was wondering, did I make the wrong decision? But this kind of comes back to taking calculated risks. I was able to fully fund pretty much a 401k at work and my Roth. I maxed my Roth every year for probably the last 10 years. And, now that money's in there tax-free. My thinking is I can't go back and do this again. So if I front load it, I can take advantage of that now and get that growth working for me. To some, might not be worth doing. I used to listen to Dave Ramsey a lot and listen to the podcasts. And some of it, though, I think is just kind of like rage baiting you into listening or clicking on the video. And one of his key principles that he always talks about is paying off your mortgage. So I want to run a calculation to see how much interest I've paid by having a mortgage and how my 401k and investments have been doing since, I have a mortgage payment, but how have those performed? I think in my case, it might even be like a 2-to-1 ratio of interest versus my investments more than doubling. So in that extent, I'm not worried about having the payment. It's not that big of a deal. It's around $700 currently. I can manage that. But I want to take advantage though too, because what if they do raise the interest rates based off the inflation and the way everything's going right now? Following the news, we got a new Federal Reserve person coming in. And maybe my goal should be just to keep attacking the principal. So this month is the first month in probably 4 or 5 months that I made extra principal payments. And so next month my payment will be a little bit lower, and I have access to that money if I ever need to draw against it again. But the main difference is I don't have an amortized 30-year fixed loan. Mine is a home equity line of credit. And right now it's working in my favor because I'm earning way more in dividends than I'm paying in interest, and I can manage the payment. So, in an interest rate environment that we're at right now, I'm pretty sure on this next Fed meeting, they're not going to lower the interest rate. We still have Jerome Powell in there, and he's made it pretty clear he's not going to buckle to the pressure of what's happening and what's being put on him to lower the rates. The new guy's coming in May, so I don't have that much longer of a wait. I'm just thankful that I've had a series of rate decreases, though, over the last year and a half, and it's working in my favor. So at any time, if I have a stock that's up quite a bit, I can make a huge chunk payment against my loan. But I think they cap me at somewhere around $9,000 or $10,000 that I can pay within a 30-day period because they think you're trying to pay off the loan. But either way, that's fine. I can assess what's going to work for me for the next tax year. If I sell too much, that could trigger a lot of taxes. And I want to make sure it's long-term capital gains. Those are also taxed at a lower rate than your typical income. So if I held that stock for only 9 months, that's a short-term gain. That gets taxed at the highest bracket. But qualified dividends and long-term capital gains get preferential tax treatment. So I think that's why a lot of people get upset hearing about billionaires, because they constantly borrow either against their stock at a lower interest rate, kind of like what I'm doing with the home equity line of credit, or they don't sell those shares and they don't see the taxes on it. They just pay interest. And I think once you understand this concept, you can make it work for you. So with that in mind, just want to thank you for stopping and watching the channel. If you could please leave comments and give me future topics that you want to hear about. I'd love to see more viewership, and share, like, and subscribe. Thank you.